Number 10. Wind. Wind is the name of the main character from the self-titled series, also of course named Wind. It comes from Boom Studios and was written by James Tynion IV with art by Michael Dalianos. Wind is a teenage hero who has always hidden the truth of his elven and magical heritage as a weird blood. His heritage grants him great power he's been hiding from his whole life in an attempt to fit in, being made to believe that magic is dangerous and basically turns people into monsters, or in some other way corrupts them. When he becomes too old to hide his pointed ears and who he is any longer, he is forced to either try and change or embrace who he really is. And in order to protect his friends against those who would hunt both him and them down, Wind ultimately embraces his magical side, unleashing powerful abilities. Wind has wings, can fly, and can communicate with force like spirits or sprites. He also has, like many other teen heroes, the power of friendship, which usually means he ends up making friends with powerful allies. I would say if you love the world of Avatar, you might also end up falling in love with both the character Wind and his series. It reminds me of Avatar, at least, in like the best way. Number 9. Lord Fanny. Lord Fanny is Hilda Morales, who was born as a boy but raised as a girl. She is a transsexual woman and one of the first trans heroes in comics. Lord Fanny was raised as a girl by her grandmother because only women in their culture could become witches, and her grandmother was a powerful witch who wanted to pass on her knowledge and power to Fanny. Although Fanny herself did choose to be a girl, if that makes sense. Lord Fanny is a member of the Invisibles team and was created by writer Grant Morrison and artist Steve Yoel. The Invisibles was a comic series that existed as part of DC's Vertigo imprint back when it was around. I miss Vertigo so much. The series began in 1994, and in issue 13 we'd learn more about Lord Fanny's origins and her very tragic backstory. Lord Fanny's such a cool character. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more cool, lesser known indie heroes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Quantum and Woody. You may have heard of Valiant's character Bloodshot, who recently got his own solo film, but what about all of their other superheroes? Quantum and Woody is a series and superhero duo from Valiant Comics. It was inspired by the superhero team-up series Power Man and Iron Fist, but is a lot more bizarre. The series itself was written by Christopher Priest, with art actually by the artist who did Power Man and Iron Fist. Pretty cool. Quantum and Woody are adoptive brothers who, after years of being estranged, are brought back together when their father mysteriously dies. While trying to figure out what really happened to him, they stumble upon superpowers. The catch? They must touch their power bands at least once every 24 hours to not only keep their powers, but also keep from losing their lives as well, as they would then no longer exist if they didn't touch their band. Quantum's powers are more defense-based, while Woody's are more offensive. Oh, and they also kind of have an animal sidekick, Vincent Van Gogh, who is even more bizarre than he already sounds. Just trust me, I don't want to spoil anything, but Vincent Van Gogh. What a goat. Number 7. Josephine. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series, which comes to us from Image Comics. Fatale is a supernatural noir-style comic created by the brilliant team-up of writer Ed Brubaker and artist Sean Phillips. Seriously, I love these two together. Some might argue that Jo isn't really a hero, as she's a little bit selfish, but in focusing on uncovering the mysteries of her own power and in trying to save herself, she does inevitably save others. In the long run, at least. There are a lot of people that end up being sacrificed along the way in order for Jo to stand a chance in defeating her enemies in the end. And also there are just straight up people being sacrificed along the way by her enemies who are attempting to track her down. So yeah, she kinda also gets a lot of people killed, but you know, it's not her fault. Jo's powers allow her to control all men who gaze upon her, with them being irresistibly attracted to her no matter who they are and no matter if she wants to influence them or not. Unless of course they are able to protect themselves against her influence with extremely powerful magic, which we only see from a couple characters really in the series. In other words, her power is pretty freaking strong. The only downside here, which is kind of the crux of it all, is that she can't fully control her powers. That is, she can't turn them off when she wants to, which ends up causing a lot of problems for Jo along the way, but I won't spoil any of that. Anyways, if you haven't read Fatale, it's now, I think, it's gonna be 10 years old soon, so go and read it, hurry up! Came out I think in 2012. That's when it started. Number 6. King Mob. King Mob is the leader of the Invisibles. He was once a horror writer who wrote under the pen name Kit Morrison. As the series The Invisibles is created by Grant Morrison, Mob is believed to be sort of a fictional stand-in for Morrison himself. King Mob's legal name was Gideon Starozowski, and he struggles with his alter persona, especially troubled by how violent he, as King Mob, can be. King Mob is not only a leader who wields power in that sense, because he's a leader, but also has experience with firearms and weapons, is a skilled martial artist and fighter, is psychic, can time travel, and employs the use of chaos magic. So, lots of cool things that he can do. Also, if you haven't read The Invisibles, it is really trippy. Go read it. If you like The Matrix, you'll probably like The Invisibles. If you like The Matrix and if you like Doom Patrol, which of course is also Grant Morrison. Not The Matrix, Doom Patrol. Number 5. Laura Wilson / Persephone. Laura Wilson is the main character of the Wicked and the Divine series from Image Comics. The series was created by writer Kieran Gillen and artist Jamie McKelvey. In this story, gods come to life cyclically, being kinda reincarnated. This is known as the recurrence. Laura herself is obsessed with the gods and the pantheon, who are all of course re-emerging at the time. She wants nothing more than to be a god herself. At least that is what she thinks she wants, until her wishes kind of come true. She is revealed to be Persephone, who is believed to be the final god to return during the recurrence. As Persephone, she can summon plants and vines and control them. She also seems to have some kind of control or influence over the underworld. Laura can also create fireballs and reveal to others past events, summoning visions of the past even if she was not present for those events. Number 4. Sludge. Sludge is a hero or anti-hero who comes to us initially from Malibu Comics and was created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Aaron Lopresti. Sludge was once Frank Hogue, a dirty NYPD police officer who accepted bribes in exchange for favors when it came to drug dealings. He was ordered by the crime boss he worked for, John Paul Marcello, to kill another likely dirtier cop. When Frank refused Marcello's request, Marcello had him killed instead. After being shot, a grenade went off, knocking him into a bucket of chemical waste. Who put that chemical waste there? The waste would merge with him after he was dumped into the sewers, turning him into the super heroic monstrosity Sludge. Sludge possesses a healing factor and super strength. He could also kill or mutate his opponents with just a touch. Kinda turns them into sludge. It's pretty dark, really. Number 3. Radiant Yellow. We don't know that much about the newest Radiants, but we do know that they seem interested in protecting innocent people from whatever craziness is currently going on. Okay, hard to keep talking about all of this Radiant Black series without spoiling anything, but once again, I'm gonna try my best. Radiant Yellow appears to be an older gentleman, and as far as I know, we don't really know his name yet. What we do know is that each Radiant seems to have their own power set. At least that's what we're being led to believe by the story and the imagery used. It hasn't exactly all been laid out yet, which is honestly kind of what makes this series so much fun. There's so much we don't know. The mystery of it all. Radiant Yellow, however, seems to have powers based in perhaps light manipulation. To me, that's what it looks like the force blasts that they emit are based in, and it also looks to me like they can perhaps manipulate light to create illusions. That's just based on the imagery that's surrounding them in the comics. Like the other Radiants, Yellow isn't too experienced and doesn't seem to understand the full extent of their powers just yet. Radiant Yellow comes to us from the Radiant Black series, which belongs to Image Comics and is written by Kyle Higgins, who, yes, was also the initial writer of the Power Rangers series, and it was also created by artist Marcelo Costa. Number 2. Exo Manowar. Valiant Comics actually has a whole stable and universe filled with supers, including this one here, Exo Manowar. Exo Manowar is actually the name of the sentient armor that is tied to our hero in this series, Auric of Dacia, a Visigoth from the 5th century AD. Auric would end up being abducted by aliens and enslaved for years before he managed to escape. Auric learned of where his captive's armory was kept and basically ended up getting there and then getting the Exo Manowar suit. He then bonded with the suit and used that advanced tech to escape his captors. However, due to interstellar travel, by the time he arrived back on Earth, it was now the 20th century, basically modern day. Eric would have to adjust to this very different world, and along the way would meet other superheroes from the Valiant universe. That's right, there's not just 2 more, there's a whole bunch of them. Exo Manowar is a character created by writers Jim Shooter, Steve Englehart, and as well as artists Bob Layton and Barry Windsor Smith. Number 1. Black Hammer. Black Hammer is Joe Weber, the title character of the Black Hammer series, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by the amazing Dean Ormston. The Black Hammer series was made to be completely different from other more traditional superhero comics, but if I did have to compare Black Hammer to anyone from that more conventional world, I would liken him to Thor myself. Joe Weber inherited the hammer and powers of the former Black Hammer when he died, being transported to the realm of New World as soon as he himself had picked up the fallen hammer. There he learned that he was meant to become the new Black Hammer, replacing the fallen one as Starlock's new and most powerful warrior in the fight against Starlock's evil twin, the Anti-God. While being the title character, Black Hammer isn't actually the main character of this series. As we learn near the end of issue number 1, Black Hammer sacrificed himself to save the world from the Anti-God and keep his fellow superheroes and friends alive. But what really happened to him, and just how and why are his teammates now seemingly trapped in the timeless and kinda eerie town of Rockwood? Well, to find out, you'll have to read on, true believers. But honestly, you should just go read Black Hammer because it's pretty great. Everyone go read all the Black Hammer things. It's like a whole universe now. Number 10. Draculina. To be clear, when we talk about heroes you've never heard of, we're more talking about those that sit on the outskirts of the superhero fandoms, so you won't find them likely on the big screen or on DC's or Marvel's main teams like the Justice League, Avengers, or the X-Men. Instead, these are heroes who come from a more humble background by comparison. Some of them may have been simply forgotten due to just how long they've been around, whereas others typically are associated with smaller or even in some cases now defunct publishers. Coming from the world of fellow indie hero Vampirella, Draculina is sort of Ella's adopted sister and also kind of her ex-lover or ex-one-night stand. There have actually been at least 2 different Draculinas, possibly 3 at this point. One is Lilith's biological daughter and the biological twin sister of Vampy, who is blonde. The other one, the one I'm focusing on, who was once Vampy's lover, became obsessed with her and was eventually adopted by Lilith to become the new Draculina. If you want to learn more about her and other Vampy adjacent characters, Sacred 6 is a pretty cool comic that I would recommend that you check out. Or you can learn more about this version of Draculina in the 2019 Vampirella series from Dynamite. Both of those series, by the way, are by Christopher Priest. Both Draculinas go by the name Victory, although the one we're talking about here was originally named Victoria, but the two do differ in terms of appearance and, like I said, blood relation. Blood relation in this context almost becomes a vampire pun. This new Draculina isn't exactly a vampire, by the way, but is armed with a demonic ring that basically grants her powers similar to one, allowing her to accurately play the part. Draculina is currently a property of Dynamite Comics. Number 9. Tony Chu. Tony Chu is a quirky and unique character, but still is ultimately a hero, and even technically has superpowers, so he would qualify as a superhero. Tony is a detective who possesses the unique power of sebopathy. Whatever he eats, except for beets, he gains in-depth knowledge of, being able to tell where all the ingredients that make it up came from, being able to taste everything about that ingested food. Tony uses this skill to basically solve murders mainly, sometimes even ingesting parts of the victims or the suspects to learn more about the case and help solve it. He initially worked for the Philadelphia Police Department, but ultimately gets fired after they witness him eating part of a deceased suspect. He later is hired by the FDA. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, there are actually a lot more indie superheroes that I would love to tell you about as we dive into the world of unknown supers. So if you want to learn more, be sure to let us know by commenting below and giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Red Sonja. One of my favorite lesser known heroes is Red Sonja. Red Sonja comes to us from the less sci-fi, more fantasy-based world of sword and sorcery. She is an extremely gifted fighter, marksman, and sword bearer. Red Sonja, the she-devil, is said to have been given her name for, well, many different reasons. One such story as to how she got her name is that she left to seek out adventure and her fortune and became a mercenary, earning the name Red because of all the blood that she spilled. Red Sonja, while not a traditional hero, pretty much always stands up to those who are cruel and corrupt, often fighting for those who are oppressed, even against her better judgment. She has even fought death before in combat and won, allowing her to live on when she was on the brink of death. Red Sonja was once a character from the Marvel Comics wheelhouse, but currently calls Dynamite Comics her home. Number 7. Vampirella. But you can call her Vampy. Vampirella isn't a conventional hero by any means, but she definitely tries to do what's best by folks while still being a vampire from outer space, and at the same time with ties to Lilith and Hell. Overall, she's both complicated and also kinda super simple, and it's that weird blend of those two very different elements that I love about her. Vampy being an intergalactic vampire is super strong, fast, can fly because she actually has wings, and also has been shown to have access to advanced technology at times due to her ties to the planet Draculon. Vampirella is currently attached to Dynamite Comics but was originally a property of Warren Publishing. Number 6. Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon is a popular hero as far as the lesser known or indie heroes go, so if you haven't heard of him before, you might want to check him out. Initially, his origins were a mystery. All we knew was that he was a humanoid, green-skinned, dragon-like character who decided to fight as a police officer and hero, fighting against the criminal and mutant super freaks of Chicago. That's also in part because Savage Dragon initially had really bad amnesia in the comics, so he didn't actually even remember his own origin story at the time. Savage Dragon hails from Image Comics and was originally introduced as simply Dragon before being known under the mantle of Savage Dragon. His powers include super strength and super healing. Number 5. Witchblade. Witchblade is a hero who comes from Top Cow Productions. Mainly we've known Witchblade as Sarah Pizzini, but the Witchblade has belonged to many other powerful women throughout the years. The Witchblade is an ancient mystical artifact that typically binds itself to a host who can then wield and use its powers at will. It can be more or less powerful depending on the host, but in this case, since Sarah is one of the most well-known hosts of the Witchblade, we're gonna basically base the ranking on her abilities. The Witchblade can be used to summon mystical armor, which can cover the entirety of its host's body, though typically most are not skilled enough to actually summon that much armor, and instead are usually only covered in little pieces of armor as a result. Hence why you see that Witchblade art and she's like, not really covered in much. This armor grants the wearer invulnerability, but even if its host is harmed, it also grants the power to heal. Aside from creating armor, the Witchblade can also be used to create weapons on the fly. It also increases its host's strength and endurance. Sarah herself was also a trained NYPD detective prior to becoming the host for the Witchblade, so she also brings her skills as an officer and detective to the table. Number 4. Luther Strode. Luther Strode is the main character in the Strange Talent of Luther Strode series, a series that hails from Image Comics. Luther ends up acquiring powers that enhance his strength, durability, speed, and combat skills after receiving a mail order exercise program known as the Hercules method. Luther's powers, however, only create more harm than good in his life and lead to a lot of death, much of it happening as a result of his own involvement. Try as he might to try and do good with it. While not a conventional hero, Luther definitely fits the bill of an anti-hero, or more accurately tragic hero archetype, with everything going awry no matter his intent. He's also someone I would personally love to see take on the hero who made our number 2 spot. Number 3. Radiant Black. Radiant Black is Nathan Burnett, or was Nathan Burnett. Nathan to start, anyways. Going to try not to spoil this series because it's one that I think we should all be reading, so I'm just gonna leave it at Nathan for now. Radiant Black is the first hero we meet in this series. In issue number 1, Nathan ends up getting the powers of the Black Radiant, which basically means he has the powers of a black hole. Radiant Black can manipulate gravity and also becomes super dense with this power set. The downside for this hero is being new means that he's pretty inexperienced in the comics thus far. However, gravity manipulation as a power set is insane, which is how he ranks so high up on this list despite his inexperience. Radiant Black hails from Image Comics, and like I said, if you have not checked out this series and gotten to know the Radiants yet, well, you definitely need to change that, and you need to do so. It's like Power Rangers, but possibly cooler, and I say that having much respect and much love for Power Rangers. So that's not a snub at all, it's just like, it's really good. Number 2. Bulletproof. You know Invincible, but do you know Bulletproof? Fans of the comic series likely do, but if you just became an Invincible fan via the animated series, then this isn't a character that you'd be familiar with just yet. After all, at this point we've only had 1 season so far, so it's very likely Bulletproof will appear in the series, just not until a bit later on. Bulletproof is Xandel Rudolph. He got his powers as a result of his brother using him as basically a science experiment, as his brother Tyrone was actually obsessed with superpowers. Xandel would end up getting powers as a result of this mad science, while his brother would end up dead. Bulletproof also goes on to take up the Invincible mantle at one point, filling in for Mark when he is off-world. Xandel's powers are based on energy absorption, which I think is one of the strongest power sets to have personally. Bulletproof, like other heroes in the Invincible universe comes to us from Skybound, which is an imprint of Image Comics. Number 1. The Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient elemental force that takes up residence in a host, granting them special powers. One of the most famous hosts that we have come to know as the Darkness is Jackie Estacado. The powers that Jackie wields are similar to what you'd expect from some kind of demonic force. They're also honestly comparable to Venom's power set from Marvel Comics. At least I see a lot of similarities there. The Darkness gives you access to a sort of mystical armor which can be summoned at will. It also grants the user a healing factor, shapeshift abilities, and through them also the ability to fly via wings that you can create. Jackie as the Darkness can also create dark tendrils, which he can also turn into weapons, and he can also summon entities known as Darklings. While more of an anti-hero due to his methods, Jackie Estacado is still a hero in the sense that he generally fights on the side of good. The Darkness hails from Top Cow Productions. And if you do know the Witchblade, you probably know the Darkness, or vice versa.
Coming in at number 10, Prowler. Hobie Brown. Now, when I mention the Prowler, of course the first thing that comes to your mind is Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles Morales, who played one of the villains in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. If you haven't seen it, it literally won an Oscar. It's amazing. Go watch it right now after this video. That is one of the best movies, period, not just animated movies, but best movies ever. Yeah, that's it. But I'm talking about Hobie Brown's Prowler. A little bit different. He made his comic book debut back in Amazing Spider-Man 78 in 1969. I like the OG Prowler more. He was a villain and then kind of like a hero, and he has an honest character arc, you know? Like, he was this guy who cleaned windows for a living. In the middle of a shift, this guy gets caught in the middle of a fight with Daredevil and Stiltman. So after that incident, he was inspired to make his own suit and secret identity to go along with it. So he made himself wrist and ankle bracelets to hold cleaning fluid and gave himself boots and claws to help climb. Not a bad idea at all. Kind of feels like you just want to be a villain. I don't know. That's a really weird way of doing it. Get a camelback, put it in there, then spray the stuff. I don't know, just an idea. So after he lost his job, however, it became clear what his next step had to be. Now I say had to because this was an honest guy who didn't want to hurt anybody. He didn't want to be a villain. He just needed to get by. Spider-Man gave him warnings too, like he didn't really crack down on him too hard. He knew that Hobie Brown wasn't a bad guy, and that's what I love about him. We have Aaron Davis in the MCU, played by Childish Gambino, and he's an arms dealer, so I'm hoping, as you guys are probably as well, that he makes a similar character arc becoming the Prowler, whilst also introducing Miles Morales in that MCU. And I feel like we're honestly days away from finding out who's playing Miles in the MCU, because they're filming, I think right now, the new Spider-Man. So comment down below who you think is going to be casted, and then once it's out, we can come back and check the comments and see who's right and who's wrong. And we'll shout out only the wrong people. We'll shame you. Shame. He also looks a lot like Spawn. I don't know, just saying. Number 9, the Orb. This guy is quite fun, and believe it or not, he's been clearly referenced in the MCU. You just gotta keep an eye out for it. Puns, here we go. There's so many puns in this thing, by the way, it's gonna get nuts. These puns are wild. Yeah, he's got an eyeball for a head, and no, I'm not joking. Making his first appearance in Ghost Rider Volume 6, Issue 26, the Orb is, well, yeah, look at him. He was born with a head that was a giant eye, and if that's not already the coolest thing ever, I don't really know what is. His parents abandoned him at a young age because, well, of course they did. I mean, it would be quite the scene during childbirth. Oh, it's crowding. Yep, I think I see the head. Nope, it sees me. That's definitely a big eyeball. We gotta go. So naturally, he was made fun of. He couldn't speak either. I mean, he just made squishy noises. His massive eyeball head had powers. I mean, I hope, or else this guy's life is just a horror film. He can blast people with this red energy beam that shoots out of his eye thing. And he can even tell when somebody's thinking about him, which would probably be a lot of the time, considering that's what he looks like. So yeah, he was for sure referenced in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Right at the start of the movie when Scott is playing with Cassie, she has to use this retinal scanner thing. It's like in the cardboard fort. And she puts on this paper plate mask that looks like a big eye. And if that's not a reference to the Orb, it's a reference to Mike Wachowski. So one or the other, I got it. Number 8, Jack-O-Lantern. 'Tis the season, so it's only fair to include Jack-O-Lantern. Making his debut in Captain America issue 396, he's a sick villain. Jason Macendale, who started off as a mercenary but was deemed too violent, so naturally after his departure he donned a new look and gave himself a fancy new evil nickname to go along with it, Jack-O-Lantern. I love his look, it's very Headless Horseman type, I like it. He was referred to as Mad Jack in Spectacular Spider-Man in the 90s, and he actually was Mysterio. This whole time? No, just in that iteration. So from 1996 and onward, starting with Spectacular Spider-Man 241, that's when Norman Osborn comes up to Daniel Beckert and pitches his new alter ego, Mad Jack. He shows him the new pumpkin head, very nice touch, elegant, nice and terrifying too. The fancy glider, the pumpkin bombs, the blasters. I can see a live action jack-o'-lantern happening, for real. I mean, we're pretty much there with all the gliders and the gear. Once you throw on a jack-o'-lantern into the picture, that's it, it's pretty much done. We have Hobgoblin, we have all those gliders. I think it's time for jack-o'-lantern. Hashtag Mad Jack. Number 7, Jim Jaspers. He made his debut in Daredevil's number 7 in 1983. This dude's pretty wild. He started off as a British politician who served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and then he was a leader of the Conservative Party, okay? So he was known for his anti-superhero stance. I mean, of course, your name is Jim Jaspers. You already sound like an annoying character, brother. Jim Jaspers. Jim Jaspers over here, sir. He didn't like soups because he wanted to keep Britain safe. Fair? I mean, you got a point. So of course, many people agreed with him and he won the general election. Bam, done. But Jim Jaspers had some little Jim Jaspers tricks up his sleeves. He actually was a mutant with reality warping powers. Oh, these type of guys scare me. Like one bad day and then it's over. Like, they're crazy. I don't like those guys. So he's representing Haslop West and even gets knighted by Queen Elizabeth. So he creates this strike team whose job it is to gather up all the superheroes. And the slogan and all the posters says, "In your hearts, you know he's right. In our hearts, way to go after our souls." The best part of the capabilities of Jim Jaspers takes place in the Marvel UK storyline, Crooked World. So if you want to see the reality warping Jim Jaspers is capable of in full force, you gotta check that out yourselves. Also, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Jim Jaspers will be introduced in WandaVision and will be a secret villain working quietly. I'm calling it now. Check the date, that's it. Number 6, Hyperion. The Superman of the Marvel Universe, basically. I mean, making his first appearance in Avengers issue 69 back in 1969. Nice. That's right, so when the Grandmaster traveled to Earth 712, he challenged Scarlet Supreme to a contest. So each fighter gets to kind of pick their own team. So the Grandmaster won using the Squadron Supreme. So he changed 3 people over to become Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, and the Wizard. Now of course, he still needed that Hyperion spot, so he created him out of extra dimensional matter. Spirit fingers. Even throwing in the artificial memories to go along with it. He was made to think he was Zibron, this space explorer from Yttrium, a planet from one of the microverses. Named after the Titan of Greek mythology, Hyperion actually went toe-to-toe with Thor. But, you know, with Thor being Thor and all, Hyperion ended up losing. The hammer was too much to handle. Another pun. Kind of. That was, we're pushing. Hyperion was shrunk, depowered, and imprisoned by Thor into this tiny glass globe. Don't worry though, Nebulon got him out. He's good. Number 5, Lyra. We go now to Earth 8009, beginning with Hulk Raging Thunder issue 1. We find Lyra Walters, or more commonly referred to as Savage She-Hulk. So she's from Earth 8009 in the 23rd century, and then at that time the Earth was split into 2 different factions. The guys' factions were like warriors, you know, they just looked up to heroes like Wolverine, just manly men, I guess, being men. And the women came together under the United Sisterhood Republic, and they were outgunned and outmanned. Literally. So Thundra got sent to Earth 616 where she met that Earth's Hulk and then had a baby. And then Lyra actually gets stronger when she's calm, which is of course not common when it comes to our green giants. That'd be amazing to see though. It just cuts to like Lyra reading a book and everyone's like, man, she's wild right now. Look at how strong she is. She's like, just jacked while she's reading 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Green! This is great, this is awesome. She's also able to tap into gamma sight, which means she basically can see the flow of gamma radiation. She's one with the gamma. Like all over the world too, not like within her personal range. She taps into all of it. So she becomes more skilled in this state because she sees everything and knows the next move. If she becomes angry, however, she will actually become weaker. So it's a fun little game of opposites. But at her weakest, she's still as strong as Spider-Man, so doesn't quite say a lot when you say the word weakness. Number 4, Songbird. Also known as Melissa Gold, Songbird made her comic debut in 1997 in the Incredible Hulk issue 449. She ran away from her parents at a young age, of course, and whilst developing a hard knock life attitude, she ended up becoming a professional wrestler, just like the Spider-Gwen version of She-Hulk, funny enough. That would be a fun crossover. I don't know. She gave herself the stage name Screaming Mimi and joined the wrestling crew, the Grapplers. Now, in Marvel's television run, they could for sure bring this character in. It can happen. And it would be a blast. So the Grapplers were straight killing it, but they weren't making the same amount of money as the male wrestlers. That rings a familiar bell, huh? Doesn't it? So they took on a new job with the Roxxon Oil Company. Now, of course, the mission failed because Quasar came in and had to save the day. Melissa was given vocal cord implants that provided her with acoustic kinetics. Hence the name Screaming Mimi. You figured it out. She can make all these crazy weapons with just her voice, and even has the ability to craft herself wings and fly. Whenever I scream, my voice just cracks. Like, a lot. Number 3, Swarm. Okay, this next guy is an absolute unit. Fritz von Meyer made his debut in Champions issue 14 back in 1977. And as you can probably guess by his name, he's made of 1,000 bees. And as you can probably guess by his actual name, he's also a Nazi scientist. He used looted gold to pay for all of his projects. He's this Nazi beekeeper. I mean, what a character. One day he found a beehive that was quite different, to say the least. So Fritz made a device that would help reawaken these mysterious bees, which he thought were the end result of a mutation with a nearby fallen meteorite. So these bees ended up attacking and killing Fritz, not the Nazi beekeeper Fritz. As you would think, his consciousness was spread out through all of these bees, and now you have this monstrosity bee guy. Just a man made of bees. I don't care what criminal you are, if you see a guy made out of bees, I'm tapping out, that's it. Like, there's no fight. If I was robbing a bank and I heard like behind me, there's no chance any amount of money is worth that pain. Puns are killing it. Number 2, Leapfrog. Yep, you heard me. Okay, picture this. What if when Cap said Avengers Assemble and Avengers Endgame, and it just panned through all those characters, there was just like a frog just chilling there, like a frog guy, just standing like, yeah, let's mess him up. All wet and frog-like. Vincent Patilio, of course, was an inventor. I mean, who else gets to this point in their life? Must be a wacky inventor. Making his first comic book debut in Daredevil issue 25 in 1967, he was a loser. In his own words, he said this, not me. He invented things, but nothing was sticking. Again with the puns, oh my god, this guy's wild. So until one day, he created these powerful leaping coils. And after that, he decided to, well, do crimes, because of course. And in one of his first villainous outings, he went to an airport and started leaping around and prevented planes from taking off. That's the worst villain move right there. Delaying my trip to Fiji? No sir, Leapy Man. This guy would be a great villain for a TV show. I feel like Falcon and the Winter Soldier could bring him in for like one episode. They have Batroc the Leaper coming back, so let's just do like a team of leapers. The entire episode is just Sebastian Stan looking around like. And lastly, coming in at number 1, Gamecock. Yep, I said that. Carlos Cabrera made his comic book debut in Captain America issue 183. He was a small villain who crossed paths with Steve Rogers a couple of times. And as far as powers go, he has none. But he dresses like this, so one would only assume he's the coolest, strongest, baddest dude in the game. He is, however, a great fighter. And I see how the inspiration came about. Cockfighting, the sharp claws, he's a great fighter. He also sports the claws on his feet and his hands. And if you think this guy wasn't already insane enough, he has a crew that he rolls with who also dresses up like chickens. I feel like they could use this character in an Easter egg easily. I mean, just having any sporting event with a chicken mascot and his name could be Carlos. Boom, then all of us would be like, that's the chicken thug, I know that guy. Maybe he could even call his gang the Chicken Nuggets. And whenever he wants to leave, he like snaps his fingers and he goes, let's dip. And the other chicken dudes are like, yeah, let's go rob somebody. I could use an extra $1. Yeah, that's like 7 puns. I'll leave now, that's fair, that's fair. Number 10, Bob. Hands down the best name for a superhero sidekick, period. We have Bob. Making his first appearance in Cable and Deadpool issue 38, Bob is a former member of the terrorist agency known as Hydra. Hail Hydra. But most importantly, hail Bob. So how did Bob get into Hydra in the first place? What are you doing, Bob? Well, his wife Allison was giving him a hard time for not being able to get a steady job. so he figured he would work for Hydra. Classic. He wasn't a big fan of the organization though, only because they didn't have dental coverage. I mean, fair. Not a bad point, Bob. Valid point. Funny enough, Bob made a brief cameo in the 2016 Deadpool movie, where in the final battle of the film, he caught up with him, talking about Bob's wife Gail and her amazing tuna casserole, right before a quick headbutt knockout. But don't worry, Wade dragged Bob off screen to safety, or so we assume.
Number 9, Elsa Bloodstone. I can already hear the fans of Elsa Bloodstone raging in an uproar of that they know Elsa and how dare I put her on this list. And while yes, Elsa Bloodstone does have some very passionate fans, I will add that there are actually a lot of Marvel fans out there who are unfamiliar with her. Trust me, I know some pretty intense fellow comic nerds who have never heard of her until running into her in Marvel Strike Force. I'm looking at you, Dylan. So I thought it might be nice to talk a little bit more about this character who is super awesome, but tends to be less celebrated and not as well known to most. Elsa was born into a legacy of monster hunters. Her father Ulysses was a monster hunter before her, and so it was her destiny to defeat monsters while working alongside the good ones. Let's not forget that the Marvelverse also has a whole other horror and monster aspect to it as well. After all, Blade is also a part of Marvel. Have we ever gotten a Blade and Elsa team up, by the way? That is something I'd love to see. Should have already happened at this point.
Number 8, Jasper Sitwell. He made his comic book debut in 1966 in Strange Tales issue 144, and his cinematic debut in Thor 1. We all remember that agent Natasha Romanoff kicked off the building in Captain America Winter Soldier. That was the big reveal moment for the Falcon. But who was the agent that they were threatening? Well, Jasper Sitwell posed as a high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. In reality, he was actually working for Hydra. This dude wasn't close too, like him and Coulson were the ones that got the call about Thor's hammer first landing on Earth. And he was one of the secret masterminds behind Project Insight. Could have been worse though. In the comics, Sitwell is actually Nick Fury's assistant, and at one point temporarily becomes the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Sitwell is played by Maximiliano Hernandez in the MCU, so if you want to see him on the big screen, you've got a little bit of catching up to do.
Number 7, Lindsay McCabe. Lindsay is the best friend of Jessica Drew. You maybe never knew that she had? Me personally, I thought Jessica's best friend might be Carol Danvers, and maybe now that might be more true, but throughout the later 70s to the mid 90s in the comics, Lindsay McCabe was it. She and Jessica met while living in New York at a group therapy clinic. Jessica liked Lindsay because she was a tough, strong woman who wasn't afraid of Jessica or intimidated by Jessica's strange powers. Eventually, the two moved to San Francisco together when Lindsay got the opportunity to study theater there. Lindsay herself was an actress. Lindsay would eventually learn Jessica was Spider-Woman and would also spend some time working with Jess when she had her private investigation agency. She would also try to help Wolverine in the disguise of Patch, whom she also knew previously, though did not actually recognize. She didn't know it was Wolverine, thought it was Patch, to save her friend Jessica when she was possessed by the Black Blade, aka the Muramasa Blade.
Number 6, Space Knights. Okay, these guys are awesome, and I hope we get a Space Knights show soon, or in my lifetime at least. They're fairly new to the game, having first appeared in Guardians of Infinity issue 2, only back in 2016. So a long time ago in the Outer Rim, a substance known as core was discovered. This substance gave a little bit of flair to the Perrin's warriors' weapons. So led by Horn, the warriors saved the planet from slavery. One thing to note about core that's rather important is that if it's sitting too long, it would corrupt the soldiers. So they always have to get a move on. Kind of like if I'm near chocolate milk at any point in my life. It's just eventually gonna corrupt me, and then I'm gonna have to chug all of it because I have no self-control as a human being. Get it away from me. Go, gone. So as time went on, more and more joined in on the warriors' efforts, and the group came to be known as, you guessed it, the Space Knights.
Number 5, PEEPERS. PEEPERS is one of those much lesser known mutants who has been around for quite a long time, but due to his unimpressive power set, pops up a lot less in comparison to others. Similar to Eyeboy, PEEPERS' powers all kind of have to do pretty much with his sight or his eyes. A physical mutation made his eyes larger than most, so much so that they kind of protrude outward to an extent. He has enhanced eyesight, X-ray vision, and was sometimes even known to be able to fire optic blasts out of his eyes, similar to Cyclops, but not really on the same level as the X-Men team leader. PEEPERS' legal name is Peter Quinn, and while I haven't seen him pop up yet in the Dawn of X line, and hey, I've been watching for that, he has made a recent appearance in Marvel's Ravencroft series where he appears to be working as an orderly or a medical assistant at Ravencroft. pretty random.
Number 4. Ella Whitby. Making her comic book debut back in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 40, Ella Whitby was the doctor who helped Deadpool escape Crossmore Institution in England. But it wasn't long before she confessed her love for the Merc of the Mouth. Wade, however, didn't share the same feelings. Ella started to become a bit of a stalker, I guess you could say. She confessed her love to him again, only this time not so fashionable, with a homemade Deadpool suit attached to her body. So Deadpool starts to get curious and goes to her house. Turns out she's collected body parts of Deadpool. So Deadpool realizes that she's probably going for the Warden next to make Deadpool happy and all. So he goes to Warden's house, and just as he had expected, she was waiting there to kill the Warden in just the way Deadpool would do it himself. That is, by boiling tea made with ammonium nitrate on the stove with a plastic bag in the oven filling with gas. So after the explosion, Wade went back to her apartment, met up with a very burned Ella, and told her that he loves somebody else. Hashtag Wade the Heartbreaker.
Number 3. Amazing Baby. You might not know Amazing Baby just yet because, well, they're a super new character. But they also exist as a throwback to an older X-Men enemy, the Werewolves. Werewolves were an enemy of the X-Men that were almost shapeshifters. Almost. Their ability allowed them to drain their enemies of their life energy and then basically wear their skins like a suit, disguising themselves as that person. These werewolves originally hailed from Mojo World and were sentient, wolf-like, metallic-looking creatures. Amazing Baby is a werewolf pup that the Excalibur team in the Dawn of X line rescued from Cullen Bloodstone. Yes, relation to Elsa, who we talked about earlier. Cullen's her brother. The rescue pup was then given to Rachel Summers, who agreed to look after the little one despite how dangerous the mutants know this pup could grow up to be. She named her pet werewolf Amazing Baby, and you can also see him pop up in the Dawn of X's X Factor series alongside Rachel.
And number 2, Macho Gomez. Making his debut in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 32, Macho Gomez is said to be the baddest, most feared operator in the galaxy, and his name sure does sound like it. He's a skilled fighter when it comes to shooting. He's got 6 fingers on each hand instead of 5, so he has that extra accuracy, you know? He's got that one little flip-flop over for stability. He's kind of like a Mandalorian bounty hunter in a way. He has the cockiness and the attitude to follow suit as well. When he was hired to assassinate the family of Reginald Harris, he was actually tricked into thinking Deadpool had already done the job before him. So naturally, he was kind of pissed and wanted to get back at him. Now, fighting Deadpool is usually a pretty tough task. So Macho Gomez lost the battle more than once. And after losing a battle to Deadpool, Macho was pushed into an escape pod and sent into the depths of space. Meanwhile, Wade took his place and replaced him at Funzel, even marrying Orxa. That's Deadpool for you. I don't know.
Number 1. CANDRA. I love how when CANDRA first appeared in the comics, she already came with a ton of backstory and power. The funny part was that although she threw her weight around as this supervillain of sorts in Gambit issue number 1, and was this immortal who had ties to tons of other characters, this was our first time meeting her. What an introduction. During her initial appearance, CANDRA was revealed to be the Benefactress, a character who had pitted the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild of New Orleans against one another for centuries for her own purposes. She is also heavily implied to be a former lover of Gambit's, and we'd come to know her as a member of the often now forgotten Externals, an immortal, often villainous group of mutants who are insanely powerful, and not to be confused with the Eternals, which is a totally different group. And Externals as well cannot die. Well, for the most part. Remember Selene? She was also a part of the Externals, but Selene simply became much more popular, so we still know who she is.